One thing, I was at a conference. I speak at a lot of conferences. I was in Des Moines last week, and I was asking some of these presenters, they were futurists and kind of international relations guys. I said, "What worries you about the U.S.?" And they said the national debt. And they also said the inability of Congress to do anything about it, right? We have a lot of challenges in America, and we could go spend a lot of time on this. I'm looking at this from the outside. I'm concerned about a lot of things in America, but one of them I'm concerned about that Congress doesn't seem to be too interested in is the issue of the debt. Am I reading this correctly? Is it a high priority? It sure doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, yes and no. It's talked about plenty. People grandstand about their annual budget plenty because it's easy. People like to do easy things up here that give you the impression that they're doing something hard or difficult. But the other truth that people don't want to hear is that it's not just Congress, it's the entire American public that has no interest in fixing the debt, because fixing the debt would mean fixing entitlement programs, which would mean the things you like because of the checks that come into your bank account. So that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the debt. Those are mandatory spending programs. And politicians are afraid to talk about those in a serious way because, well, a huge amount of your voter base, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, is people over 65. 70% of federal spending are those programs. Those programs. You hear, I once heard somebody podcasting. It was this comedian named Dave Smith. And he made this comment that, we spend $6 trillion. So it's no wonder that there's so many rich people in Washington, D.C. area. He said there's more millionaires up here than anywhere else in the world. I don't know if that's true or not. But the next part certainly isn't true, which was that $6 trillion just goes to federal workers. That I think could be further from the truth. The vast majority of that money goes straight back to the American people, generally the people over 65. That is a massive, massive amount of money. And so when you start trying to chop stuff off here and there, let's look at the rest of the 30%. That's discretionary spending.
Right.
So that just means discretionary just means it's the stuff we spend every year. It's the stuff we actually appropriate every year. The fight that you always see about the budget, that's what we're actually talking about, just that 30%.
Right.
Now that funds the Department of Defense, it funds the intelligence communities, it funds the Department of Energy, it funds every single, that's where all the federal, when we're talking about paying federal workers, that's actually happening. And 15% of that is really defense related, and we're never going to cut that, nor should we. And in fact, that will slowly increase. And so that leaves you 15% of the budget. And you say, okay, we'll cut that all out. Okay, well, just all of that. That's quite a bit of government business. And so the reality is you're talking about small percentage points of even that. And so you're really not being serious most of the time if we're talking about the discretionary spending part and not talking about the entitlement spending part. Now, does anybody take it seriously up here? Yes, there's those of us who try. And I think in the budget committee recently voted on what's going to be a debt commission, which was the idea being that it's sort of a third party entity that studies the problem and tells us what we already know about the hard decisions that need to be made. But the problem is like we can all Republicans in theory could unite and come out and say that these hard decisions need to be made about Medicare and Social Security. And they're not as hard as you think they are. They're easy to twist. And that's exactly what happens. Democrats say you want to throw Granny off a cliff. Trump says you want to throw Granny off a cliff. Even I mean that's
right.
So you really got it coming from both sides.